If you want to know more about how to use VLOOKUPs, then this video is going to show you how to use them. The key is to keep practicing yourself so it becomes really normal to use lookups. They're really powerful, and it's likely that you're going to need them on a pretty regular basis as an Excel user. You can download the dataset we'll be using on this tutorial from my website, and I'll put the link in the description below, and you can find those datasets in the free datasets course that's there. So we'll be using Pupils Dataset B. You can watch previous videos in this series by clicking on the playlist that I'll put in the description, and that's going to explain a bit more about the dataset we're working with here. So in Pupils Dataset B, we have another worksheet with data in, and that contains some more information about the pupil scores in history and in science. So it's all in percentages already, so we don't need to convert them like we've done in previous videos. However, we do want to see them all on the same dataset because we've got some of our pupils information here and some of it in here. So we're going to use a lookup to do that and to connect the datasets together. The way a VLOOKUP works is it takes one column, so in this case we're going to use our pupil ID in column A. So it takes that ID that's found in both of the datasets and looks for a match, and then it returns a value back from that other dataset from the column that you want. So we're going to use the pupil ID column to identify the matching rows, and then we're going to ask for the second and then the third columns to be returned. So we'll do two lookups. It's important to be aware that using a VLOOKUP will return the first value it finds. So if your dataset has duplicate rows in it, it's going to return the first value it's looking for. So for example, if pupil ID 1 was in this twice with different history scores, it would bring back this first history score of 44.09. So what's really important to be aware of is really understanding how your datasets are constructed. And we need to understand our data before we start using these functions. To quickly identify the duplicates in the dataset or see if there's any there, we're going to first highlight all the data in our dataset. Then we're going to go to Home and Conditional Formatting. Now if we click on Highlight Cells Rules and go down to Duplicate Values, then it will format our duplicate values here, and you can see we've got two rows, all the rest of them are fine, two rows that have exactly the same information. So as I can see the data is the same in both rows, I'm going to delete one row. So I'm just going to highlight the row, right click and delete, and then my formatting now disappears and I'm happy that there's one row for each pupil. If they were different, so if the scores were different, I'd need to check with whoever sent the file which one's correct. So by going through this process, we've done some data cleansing. Before I use the lookup, I'm going to prepare the data like we've been doing previously. So firstly, by changing the data into a table, so that's Control and L, and then I'll click on OK. This is very good practice, so I'm going to keep on reminding you to do this in all these tutorials. And then we're going to rename both of the tables. So in our design view, this is table 2, and this is called Additional Information. Oh, I need to make sure that there is no spaces in between. Additional info, I'll call that one. And then if I go to Pupils Dataset A, I can rename this one. I'll just call this Pupils. So now we're going to use the lookup, the VLOOKUP. So we're going to go to this main data set on the Pupils Dataset A worksheet, and we're going to add a new column, and we're going to call it History Percentage because that's the column that we want to bring through from the other data set. And then in the second row, we're going to type this equals VLOOKUP open bracket. So that's a function that exists in Excel, and it'll tell you all the components that it needs. So we're going to go through that now. So the first thing we want to do is select the column that will match the two data sets together. So that's going to be pupil ID. So we want to bring through this one, so this particular ID on this row, and then it's a comma. And then we need to highlight the second data set. So we're going to click in here and we're going to highlight the whole thing. And as always, because it's in a table, it understands that we're looking at that whole table. Then it's another comma, and we're going to specify the number 2, which tells Excel that we want to return the second column in the additional information dataset, and then comma again, and then we're going to put in 0, and that means false. And that essentially tells Excel just to bring back exactly that match on ID. I've never needed to use the true functionality, but there are some reasons when you would use it. But for the purposes of returning a value for an exact match, just select false. And then we'll close the brackets and click on enter. So for pupil ID, we can just verify the data now. Pupil ID, we've got a history of 44.09, which is up here, 44.09, yeah. And maybe we'll look at pupil ID 15, 73.71, 15, 73.71. So again, good practice, verify your data that your lookup has worked as you're expecting it to. Now you can see that Excel has returned all the history scores. We're going to do exactly the same thing with the science percentages. So create a new column, science percentages, then equals VLOOKUP. We're going to put in our ID, comma, go to additional information and click on the whole data set. So it recognises the table. This time we're going to bring back column 3, and again it's false at the end, so that's a 0, and close it off. And now we've got our science percentages. So again, I'll just spot check a couple. So number 3 should be 63.83. Number 3, yep, 63.83, and let's look at number 10. That's 27.19. Number 10, 27.19. The other thing that's just worth mentioning as well is that if you ever get a bit lost about what components you need, if you click up here on this FX, it breaks down the different things that you need, and you can quickly fill in each component by clicking into these and going to the area that you want. So I'll click on OK, and then gets us to the same place. Then finally, I am going to just rename this tab down here just to tidy our data set up, and I'm going to call it Pupils here. And then I'm going to save it as Pupils Dataset C. Before you move on to any further videos, I'd like you to try this out yourself, going through the same steps of downloading the dataset, changing the second dataset into a table and renaming both of those tables, then identify and remove the duplicates, and finally put in VLOOKUPs for both the history and the science percentages. Keep repeating this exercise until you can do the VLOOKUP without watching the video to help you. As I've mentioned before, this is an essential part of using Excel as an analyst, and it lays down great foundations for moving on to databases and joining tables together in the years ahead. When you've done all of this, you can click on like or put done in the comments below. Thanks for watching.